absolutely. The Presage that came out right after our last episode, and that was we were singing a lot of praises for the season as a whole, but that definitely capped it off. And it was nice to see they kind of front loaded this season a little bit, and they just gave a lot of goods early on instead of like, because in the past, since I think all the past seasons for the last year or so, the exotic has normally been, there's been a season pass exotic, maybe like a couple new ones, and then the main exotic was always like maybe 2/3 into the expansion, like a good way down. Even Hawkmoon was a good maybe halfway, and the Catalyst was like towards the end. But this time,
last 4 weeks,
front loaded it, and a really good mission, easily, unanimously one of the best missions they've added. It's
right, best exotic quest since Whisper of the Worm, I think, is not an understatement.
Amazing. It's
right, like it's so good.
Yeah, I did it solo, and it's the best of Destiny, the best of PvE. Also, the little leveling tweak is also a further example of how the leveling system is pointless, because you'd have an activity where it just scales to whatever your level is. They're going to be swords no matter what. I had to check my thing to make sure because it shows swords. I was like,
right, because it says 1230 on the level requirements, but then all of a sudden the screebs are all still hitting like trucks.
No, great mission, because the Scorn, obviously, Scorn are an extra-ish race. We haven't seen much of them since Forsaken, so it's good to see a nice activity, just a ship full of Scorn, and it's just their expansion, their not expansion, their little mission, their little spotlight time in the sun. It's just a nice little balance of jumping puzzles and speed, and just punching the spores and going through the walls. Little bits of combat here and there, kind of claustrophobic. Osiris is talking over the comms. Yeah. Gameplay wise, it's amazing. The exotic as well, obviously the ending room, the exotic you get from it, all amazing. Even better with the Catalyst that just came out in the what's it called, the Prestige version, the Master,
the Master version. I think.
Master version. The high difficulty one. Talk to me about the lore. What is the I know you just released a video on it, so if people want to find out the full lore, definitely check out Biaf's video, because he just put out one which goes into full depth on the lore behind it. But give me a rundown of what's the deal with this ship? What's going on here?
So the long story short is that back in last season, there were rumors around the Tangled Shore, which got talked about in the season pass armor. And the rumor was that Callus was kidnapping Scorn for some reason. We now see where all those Scorn ended up. It turns out that they were being shuttled off to the Glycon, which is this ship which we found in this pocket of dark space. And when I say dark space, I really do mean dark with a capital D, as in, it's the darkness. It's an area of space that's an anomaly, which is part of what's kind of happened to all the planets as well. They've all disappeared into these different pockets. The Glycon itself was under the command of Callus, who entered the vessel at a certain point, accompanied by his scholars, and undersaw experiments on the Scorn, which were involving not just their dark ether and the one major success of their experiments thus far called the Locus of Communion, but also the Crown of Sorrow. And all of these experiments were ultimately trying to allow Callus to contact the darkness. And this kind of reveals a few interesting things. First of all, it reveals that Callus might be dead thanks to all of these experiments. It's not entirely clear, because in the second week we actually get some dialogue talking about how the darkness addressed Callus in his own voice, where previously the dark voice that had come from all of the Scorn, is talking only in the voices of the dead. It leads us to this fascinating conclusion of like, okay, so this is what Callus has been doing in this time between.
Yeah.
And of course, all of this is wrapped up by a guardian who was in Callus's employ, a guardian called Catabases. And his ghost, Gilgamesh, comes along with him, of course, but ultimately, the guardian is dead. He's strung up at the end of the mission, surrounded by all these spores.
Very cool shot.
It's fantastic. It's like, in the best ways possible, I think, as well. The mission calls back to a lot of pop culture with the way that it's constructed, but feels like its own ship at the same time, Like, the tunnels at the very beginning and when you go into the shafts, that is pure alien, full stop, no question, All of the spores around and the strange growths, it feels like a strange mix between Avatar and Prometheus in terms of
Last of Us,
the artistic languages, you know? And then, of course, the trash compactor, I'm sure, is no reference whatsoever to Star Wars. You know, nothing whatsoever like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
the
Dead
hangers
Space.
don't.
Yeah, so many references.
Dead Space is, yep, absolutely another great point of reference. Like, yeah, they pull a lot of different kind of like aesthetic feels together for this mission. Even the hangar, everybody sat there as like, this feels familiar, and everybody then pointed out why it was, because it feels like the hangar's out of Halo. You know, out of Halo 1, Halo 2, and
that combat room in the middle.
You know,
Yeah,
yeah.
sort of one, yeah.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and it was. They even, one of the Bungie designers said that was kind of the inspiration behind that part.
Yeah. Oh, God. Just no end of praise for it. But even more so because in this second week, there's actually new dialogue if you've not played it. I won't go too much into details on this because I'm sure people will want to play it for themselves, and they should, because it's honestly like the best exotic mission to date as far as the story is concerned as well. But yeah, you actually get Osiris in the first iteration of it, and in the second iteration, Caiatl joins, and it's kind of a joint investigation at that point, which is really good because it's establishing through a lot of the dialogue between the two of them the fact that Caiatl is not so much a villain, but is more an antagonist. You know, and the reason I say that is because you can,
good word, yeah,
right? Like, we are opposed to them, but she's very much not a villain. She's not evil, you know? She's very much a sympathetic character in that sense. You can empathize with what's happening to the Cabal at this point, and she's the face of it, and that's really good, you know? Like, she's not some cookie-cutter villain. She's actually really pragmatic in that sense, and this mission goes ahead and shows it even more, you know? That I said I won't spoil much, but I will say one thing, which is at the very beginning, she basically tries to assert her dominion over things, and then when Osiris states why you're there on the ship and the fact that this is like a return reconnaissance mission looking for a dead ghost, you know, she basically says, fine, but if you find Callus, let me know. I don't care who kills him, but he has to die. Someone's got to drag him from this hole. You know, it's a really, really fascinating mission in that respect.
It's just so good the way that just, yeah, she's this persistent character that you just see and hear her, and like you said, she's, villain is definitely the wrong word, antagonist. She's just a character who's there, and she's got an interesting arc to her. It's not just a villain that shows up and we have to just destroy her in the first couple days, and yeah, it's just fitting.
Do you want a spicy hot take, by the way?
Go for it. That's what we live for.
Caiatl's story is better than Oryx's. Not her lore. Her lore is still, you know, lags behind Oryx a little bit, but that's partly because she hasn't had much time to breathe.
In what way? Expound.
In the lore sense. So, Oryx's story as a villain, and when I say story, I really do mean what you experience of him in the Taken King expansion.
Yeah, not backstory.
Oryx's, when I say Oryx's lore is better than Caiatl's, that's not the surprising point whatsoever, because Oryx has the Book of Sorrows, includes the Nokris stuff, includes some of the Savathun stuff, includes some of the Taken City stuff. Oryx has got, you know, his grubby little fingers all over the lore and is fantastic.
Yeah, one of the best characters in the lore.
Story is better because in the space of 3 weeks, she's had a small amount of development in her arc already. She is not a cookie cutter villain. She is someone who I am more invested in than Oryx. And that's including the fact that I killed Oryx's son in the gameplay leading up to all of this, because with Caiatl, we basically met her father and have been constantly interacting with her. And that's not in lore senses, that's in all of the raids we've done it before with. And it also helps that not only is she voiced fantastically and also feels like a really well-written character, but we are getting weekly interactions with her and building on the story that we started with. You know, Oryx's story is very much one and done. You know, when you finish Taken King and when you are completely done with, you know, working your way through the Taken War campaign, and when you ultimately kill him in the raid, his story is complete. Caiatl's story is still going, and that's why I'm very happy to make a hot take like that. Now again, I can differentiate between story and lore.
Yeah.
It's a fair point. But
I can fully see that.
Totally stand by it. Like, Caiatl's story is better than Oryx's. And I think people need to wake up to that, because everybody puts Oryx on a pedestal and says, we will never have a villain as good as Oryx. It's like, no, we have a villain that's as good as Oryx. We do. It's Caiatl.
In game, he was very short lived. And obviously the raid was a cool ending. But yeah, no, I can see that. I can as a valid hot take. It's just I think also rightfully so that she isn't a villain because she would not last very long, like we said, and like the Zavala meme is.
Oh yes.
I wouldn't place my bets on her, to be honest. Her versus Guardians, and I think hopefully she knows that. But even Callus, like, it was a case of impressing him and getting his respect, and he's like, "Oh, you guys, might be worthy of being my shadow, my apprentice." And over time, you kind of earn his trust. But yeah, with Caiatl, it's about fitting. She should be trying to be allies with us instead of fighting, because it's only going to end one way. And those tusks are going to be on some kind of exotic weapon. So, yeah, it's about fitting.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Oh, man. But, it's part of the reason why I hope Caiatl changes from antagonist to hero or protagonist. Well, not protagonist, but, accompanying character to the Guardian, Not only because it would actually fit with her pragmatic character, but also because she's just a really good character. I don't want her to die. She provides a really interesting point of context for the Cabal, and if she died, I think that would actually be a real shame, real missed opportunity on that front. So yeah.
Yeah, potentially
Dude, I should make this a video, man. I need to throw this spicy hot take out there and be like, "Behold, for thy opinions are covered in rose-tinted glasses."
You can justify it. You of all people can, like, not all people are going to argue. Like, you know what you're talking about. So yeah, it's not an invalid hot take. It's not that hot. Like, the way you explain it, it's might sound questionable to some veterans that hold Oryx very dear, but yeah, in game, I think you're pretty spot on with that.